Another Day by Kris Owens. Part 1, Winter. Chapter 2. "Hey, you ready in there?" Matthew yelled as he pounded his fist against the front door of his cousin's trailer. Matthew and his cousin Ralph had 20 minutes to get to the Red Cross building for the first day of class, and, as of yet, they still had not left. Matthew was a stickler for always being at least 30 minutes early no matter where he went, while Ralph was prone to showing up by the skin of his teeth, but never actually late. I'm coming. It'll only take us 5 minutes to get there. Calm down," came Ralph's voice from the other side of the plastic-coated door. Matthew turned, walked back to Ralph's car, and leaned against it. There was still a hint of morning fog lingering around the cow pasture that formed a semicircle around the trailer park he and his cousin lived in. It wasn't too terribly cold out this morning, but he enjoyed cold weather, so that wasn't saying much. He also liked the silence that came with the cold, that feeling of closed walls and still life that the surrounding dead greenery gave. It was, to Matthew, a pretty morning and one he would have loved to just walk around in. But all he could focus on this morning was the tension building in the back of his neck and shoulder from his desire to not be late. He disliked his cousin's habit of cutting things close to the point that seconds separate being on time and being late. In his mind, there was a clock eternally ticking away the day, and he was ever conscious of the seconds slipping away from him. Time he could never get back. Every moment felt like it had to have a purpose. Simply wasting time was just another way of racing toward death open-handed. If it had been up to him, they would have already been there sitting in the classroom, waiting for everyone else to show up late while they would have all their shit together and a head start on reading the textbook. But no, Ralph demanded he drive, and that meant Matthew would have to wait as Ralph fought with his wife and bothered with his kid and was held back by every other distraction that could raise its damnable head. "Hurry the hell up, man." Matthew kicked fruitlessly at the concrete that made the two-car parking area for his cousin's lot. Frustration was burning inside of him, irritation and a lack of understanding. How could someone put up with the nattering of a full-grown selfish being and its selfish offspring? Matthew wholeheartedly believed that had he been in Ralph's position, he would have already walked out of that trailer and ignored the daily drama the female inside offered up. He was also perpetually single. Matthew wasn't particularly attached to this experiment that he and Ralph were participating in either. Matthew knew the restaurant he was working for would not still be there come the end of the year. He could sense it, could see the struggles and failed action plans of the higher-ups, and so now he was trying to find an escape plan. Ralph, on the other hand, was looking for a job, any job, that would allow him to support his kid and pregnant wife better than his current, sometimes part-time, sometimes full-time job as a delivery driver for a local print shop. Matthew was really just riding Ralph's coattails, knowingly and willingly, to wherever Ralph ended up going to a point. Ralph was the only one in their two-person group who could end up hurt should this experiment fail, as Matthew's ultimate plan was just to go back to his first job, working in a grocery store. He knew the managers and was guaranteed to be rehired if he wanted it. He was really only following Ralph to make sure he didn't pass up a better deal, even though he had already determined this to be a bad idea. Matthew had no attachment to the outcome, good or bad, of this little exercise. He had no real stake in this other than the couple $100 he had spent to get in the class, but even that didn't really matter to him. He would make it back one way or the other, and even if he didn't, it hadn't broke his back to part with it. He knew where he was going. Ralph just happened to be incidental to the trip. Ralph was the lost fool with a pregnant wife and kid and no way to support them. An abortion would have been less draining, mentally and financially. There were muffled noises inside. Female yelling at Ralph over the sounds of a screaming child. The front door opened and Ralph began hustling out to the car, books haphazardly shoved under his left arm against his chest. Matthew glanced up, disapproval showing on his face, his hands deeply thrust in the pockets of a black leather trench coat. Ralph smirked as he saw the look on Matthew's face. He knew how Matthew thought and found the contrast somewhat amusing. Ralph regarded Matthew as someone who needed his presence or he would be lost in the world, unable to communicate with the other creatures that flitted to and fro around him. Oftentimes, Ralph would simply laugh when Matthew began spewing his hatred for relationships or children or people in general. But he also listened, because every once in a while, and even he had to admit to this, Matthew easily predicted how things would play out or the personality of certain people. There was also the fact that Ralph was dyslexic and Matthew was not, while Ralph was well versed in math, while Matthew barely functioned at a high school level. There was a certain level of mutual use that went on between the two that canceled out the negative parts of their relationship. Sorry about that. Janice was mad about me leaving this early. Ralph rushed to the driver's side of the car and slammed his various books on the roof of the car. It's almost 8 in the morning. Matthew shot Ralph a puzzled look. She likes to sleep in, you know how she is. Must be nice. Matthew often made it clear about how much he didn't like how Janice behaved, but Ralph would just laugh it off and never show any desire to motivate her to adjust or change it. When she has this kid, she's going to get her GED and a job, Ralph would always say, even though he knew Matthew didn't believe him. Nonetheless, Matthew assumed he had no say in the matter anyway, but he could still cast scornful glares from the shadows if he so chose. Anyways, Ralph unlocked the car and they both got in. Anyways, indeed, Matthew yawned. He hadn't slept for more than 3 hours this morning. So I have my textbook, notepad, and extra pens if you need one. Got an extra notebook? Yeah, why? Janice took my notebook because her old notepad was full. You needed that for class. It's my fault. I should have gotten an extra one for her. That's crap. When you have a wife and kids, you'll understand. If, Matthew corrected sharply and with the urge to spit just to drive home how much he refused to placate the thought. Matthew was annoyed now. He hated the response Ralph loved to use, and he used it way too often. When you have a wife and kids, that was like saying, when you grow up, what the hell was that supposed to mean? What? Do you gain some unknown and special knowledge as hidden before marriage and offspring? Do you learn the secrets of life the second your reproductive system works like it's supposed to? Or, like Matthew believed, do you just realize how much you fucked up and now your life is worth nothing except what you can hand over to the selfish cow you've decided to cling to? Matthew thought that whole concept was shit. The abusive servitude that seemed to ooze from Ralph made him sick, and the selfish attitude of Ralph's woman enraged him. He would rather be alone than put up with being bossed around by an ungrateful woman child. I get paid to be treated like shit. I'm not paying someone to treat me like shit. Thus far in Matthew's 25 years of life, there had been only one girl who had wanted to try dating him, and it was try dating him as opposed to him trying to date her, as he didn't believe in asking people out. He wanted to be sure of the interest in the other party, and if he was the one asking out the person, he couldn't be sure if they even wanted to be there. What if they had said yes to the date out of boredom, or out of a lack of an ability to say no? Why would he want to waste his time with somebody who didn't even want to be there?
The relationship had only lasted 6 months before he began to feel like she was using him for money, and he decided to just ignore her until she broke up with him. Matthew figured that if the girl broke up with him, as opposed to him breaking up with her, then she would disappear completely from his life and never come around again. But, in his own twisted logic, he believed it to be the more humane thing to do. Instead of breaking her heart and explaining why he had just decided it was over, he decided to make himself the bad guy and make her come up with the reason herself so that she wouldn't feel crushed at his actions. Instead, he reasoned, the girl would feel empowered because she herself got rid of a worthless male that was wasting her time. She could go on telling her friends how she overcame the terrible disaster that was a relationship with him. But most of all, it would ensure he would never see her again. The concept that prevented him from asking a girl out also prevented him from breaking up with the girl as well. But it worked, and he never saw her again, nor had any contact with her or her family. The value of her company did not match the amount of money he was being forced to spend on her, and in the final weeks of their relationship, Matthew began to see the girl as a bill rather than a companion. She had become something else in a long list of things that demanded his money. At least power or lot rent came once a month, unlike a female who came almost every day with her grubby paws held out, which led into his complete lack of understanding as to why Ralph stayed with Janice. He couldn't see what benefit came from their union, couldn't understand why someone would willingly subject themselves to that kind of abuse on a daily basis, pay for that kind of abuse, because that is what he felt Ralph was doing, paying Janice to be abusive to him. Surely he didn't want children that bad. A cat or a dog would be just as good, if not better. At least those provide some kind of enjoyment. A child is just another selfish, needy, demanding occupant of your living space. You have to be some kind of mentally deficient idiot to think it's anything but asking for another job on top of whatever jobs you have now.
Matthew turned his head towards Ralph to stop making himself angrier. Ralph had been talking about how work at the printing shop had been messing with his schedule, as if trying to make it hard for him to attend the classes. And I told them that if I have to quit, I will. I got a decent amount of hours and they're not giving me what I need. Ralph rattled away, reaffirming the correctness of his decision as he turned the car out of the trailer park and onto the main road into town. So you quit? Matthew knew the answer, but he liked making people say what he already knew. Calling people out amused Matthew. No, I can't quit yet. I figure this class is a month long, and then it'll take another month to find a place that'll hire me, plus whatever time it takes to get used to the job. Maybe in 3 or 4 months. You quit yet? Ralph spoke as if reading off a prepared text. He had probably been waiting for Matthew to ask that very question, just so he could show off his planning. The second I get a job, I'm out. No 2 weeks, I'll just leave. Matthew had said this all before. Remember, you might not like this job. I don't have to like it. I just have to be able to perform. Plus, the way the company is going, I'm confident there will be nothing to return to if I fail. As he said that, he thought back on his failed relationship.
But you have to want to, or enjoy being there in the first place.
Ralph would systematically go from the top of any given list, run through each component's detail, and slowly work his way down, analyzing and contemplating each and every action. Ralph could turn a shopping list into a tedious philosophical debate on the merits of the 8-ounce package as compared to the 10-ounce package. Matthew, on the other hand, would look at the list as a whole and just pick out the parts that looked as if they applied to him or his current situation, and focus on those components first before moving on to the other parts. If it wasn't relevant to the situation, then it was expendable, a viewpoint that lent itself not only to his personal life, but his professional life as well. In the 3 years he had worked at the restaurant, he had come to be known for how easily he would terminate his entire shift and work by himself. He had proven it before that he could do the job by himself, and made it clear that everyone else was there to do whatever he either couldn't do or didn't have time to do. Ralph was dead set stuck doing things in order as they were listed, while Matthew was content doing them in any order he felt as long as the end result was acceptable.